guys, it's James back again with another Spotlight video. And honestly, I was very surprised at the amount of views that my top 10 sex comedies list got, so look for a part 2 of that if I can get one together. Anyway, I started making a list of other Spotlight movies, Spotlight videos to do for other movies that got, as I said, left off this list or that list for one reason or another. And I found one. If you're watching this, you know that the movie that I picked for today is The Last Time I Committed Suicide. Now, it's not remotely like what it sounds. It's a film from 1997. It's an American independent drama film. And it's sort of, not so much a biopic, is that it's based on a letter that Neal Cassady wrote to Jack Kerouac in 1950. And the movie takes place, a lot of the movie takes place in and around 1946. And Jack Kerouac and Neal Cassady were both prominent figures in the Beat generation. And Jack Kerouac was a novelist, and Neal Cassady was a friend of his, along with Allen Ginsberg, I believe. And the movie is basically, it's narrated by Neal Cassady, and it portrays events, but it's narrated by Neal Cassady as I said, it's a letter that Neal Cassady is typing up to send to Jack Kerouac. And so you hear him narrate a lot of the movie with voiceover, and it's sort of, it centers on, you got Neal Cassady played by Thomas Jane, and his girlfriend Joan played by Claire Forlani. And the number of times I had seen it, it wasn't clear to me exactly what happened, because the movie opens with him sitting outside her hospital room. She's in there in a hospital bed, and apparently it was a suicide attempt, and she was depressed. I never got that from the movie, but I don't know, it was so brief that it just kind of flew by me. But it portrays events leading up to that event, which you don't see. Another thing that that confused me about it. What is that? No. Anyway, portrays events before and after that event. And the title, The Last Time I Committed Suicide, is sort of like a phrase you'd say, like the last time I shot myself in the foot, or the last time I committed political suicide or social suicide. It's just like the last time I screwed myself over, last time I made a big mistake. And this isn't a movie really you can spoil, because it's just a chunk, it's a small chunk of his life that the movie portrays. And it's even like the title are the last words spoken in the film, as he's closing out his letter to Jack Kerouac, sort of like, blah, 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 doing this. But as you know, Jack, this wasn't the last time I committed suicide. So it's just like, wasn't a lot. He makes a lot of mistakes in the film, and he's basically just saying, this wasn't the last of my long line of mistakes. It's basically where the title comes from, at least in my interpretation. So he's basically he's not like a car thief, is it? In that he steals cars for, like, it's something that happens throughout the movie. He just steals a car, takes a joyride, and either leaves it or returns it or whatever. And he says this in a very long monologue in the movie, and said, like, I have had in my possession a number of cars, like in like 50 or 60, something like that, throughout my illustrious career, and either taken for the purpose of a joyride or out of boredom or this, either to be disposed of or returned, blah, 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 blah. Basically just describing why he steals cars. And he gets down to the bottom and he finishes his monologue and says, wow, that was all one sentence. And it's just a fantastic performance by Thomas Jane. It was the first time I had seen him in a movie. And it was also the first Stephen K. film I had seen. And I believe it was the first film he had directed. He went on to do the Get Carter remake with Sylvester Stallone. He did Boogeyman, the horror film, which I'm a big fan of. But he's also done a ton of TV. Most recently, several episodes of the Kevin Costner show Yellowstone, which is awesome. You should definitely watch that. He did a lot of Sons of Anarchy too. Okay, the other people in the film. You've got Thomas Jane playing Neal Cassidy, Claire Forlani playing Joan. You have Adrian Brody playing his friend Ben. You have Keanu Reeves playing his friend Harry. You have Amy Smart is in there as a young girl he hooks up with. You have Gretchen Mol playing Mary, Cherry Mary as he calls her, as an on and off fling he has. One that gets him into trouble because she's underage, so her parents end up having him arrested at one point or another. You have, okay, it's not saying there, but it's from the original CSI show. It is, forgive me for this, Marg Helgenberger is in the movie as well. Clark Gregg is in there. It's a good cast, great movie, good cast. And Adrian Brody, I think, is only in a couple scenes, sort of like his. Yeah, just one of his close friends who just happens to be gay. You don't really say what he does because, like I said, he's only in like one or two scenes. He's just a friend of Neal's. Joan, as I said, is pretty much his serious girlfriend, kind of an on and off. Because in the movie, there's events leading up to her suicide attempt, and then he visits her in the hospital, and then he leaves, and he doesn't go back there to visit her for what seems like a while. They're not really clear whether like she's depressed and he doesn't want to. It's painful for him to visit her or whatever, and so like he hooks up on and off with like say Amy Smart several times with Mary. Like I said, that's what gets him into trouble. And then he meets Margaret Helgenberger's character in a bar, and she gets him to come back to her place. Well, she's actually married with her husband in the house, and she basically lures him back to the house under false pretenses because they've been taking care of Joan since she got out of the hospital, and they wanted to reunite the two. So they reunite and they rekindle, and they make all these plans that they're going to settle down and stuff like that. And he gets a tux, goes out to get a tux, and he's on his way back to her when he meets up with Harry outside a pool hall. And Harry's sort of like the older friend who's just an alcoholic, bad influence on him. And it's around Christmas time, so he basically keeps bugging him to come in here and have a drink with him. And so he finally gives in. So he's in there and has several drinks, gets a little drunk, and finally, well, Harry gets him. He's like, if you want to do me a favor, call Mary, get her to come down to hang out with me, and then you can go. So he does. He gets on the phone, gets Mary to come down to the bar, but she wants to be with Neal. So events transpire, and then Neil finally has enough. He has to go. He has to get back to Joan. But on his way back, he gets arrested by Mary's parents, who lock him up. So he gets his one phone call, but he doesn't know Joan's number. And Mary won't testify him against him, so they drop the charges, but they decide, with the mom's influence, who's a powerful individual in town, to hold him for 2 weeks. Well, he finally gets out of prison, runs to the house where Joan was staying, and no one's there. Waits for a while, no one's coming back. And then he just runs down the street, jacks a car, and takes off. And that's where the last lines of the letter are like, blah, 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 this, but that's not the last time I committed suicide, and the movie ends. Like I said, it's not really one you can spoil. It's just it's a slice of life for Neal Cassady. But I always thought it was a fantastic movie. Mostly because of Thomas Jane, because he's front and center in the movie. And as I've said before, I'm a big fan of movies with where they break the fourth wall, where they narrate via voiceover, and the way his speech pattern in the movie, like the accent, sort of like I don't know if it's like a Midwest or something accent that he's putting on, just the way he talks, like hey man, blah 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 blah. This is not the last time I committed suicide. It's just the way he's talking. It's just a great movie to watch and a great movie to listen to, in my opinion. And this was one of the ones that made me want to seek out every Thomas Jane movie I could. Back when, well, everyone's done that, where like you see a movie with a great actor and you want to see all of their movies. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, but you want to see all of them. And Keanu Reeves also does a great job as like the older alcoholic friend. Claire Forlani's only in it for a little bit, same with Gretchen Mol. And it's all these little characters that just in and out of the story all along throughout the movie, but it's pretty much all Thomas Jane. And he just does a great job. And a great first film from Stephen Kay, who went on to do even greater things. And a great supporting cast. And yeah, that's really all I can really say about it. And I remember having the VHS for years, and I ended up finding the DVD. And yeah, it's one I very much highly recommend. If you're a fan of either Stephen Kay directing style or Thomas Jane, Keanu Reeves, because those you see most of Thomas Jane, more of Keanu Reeves, I suppose, than anybody else, and then there's a lot of Gretchen Mol, and then everyone else is just like few scenes, just to kind of fill out the story. So, fan of dramas, fan of Thomas Jane or any of the actors I mentioned, or if you're a fan of the Beat Generation, Neal Cassady and Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg, that kind of stuff, then this movie is probably for you. And this is why it's in the spotlight. So, like and subscribe, comment, suggestions, all welcome. And I'll see you next time. Toodles.